what can we do for the windows? Here, because we are aiming at this, where the goal of this Excel file is, well, that's useful because these are the peak thermal loads. And here we have walls, floor, roof, windows, transmittance, and then we have total ventilation and total infiltration. So that's the same thing we have on this Revit report. For heating, we have roof, glass, wall, slab, floor, and the infiltration. And here we have the ventilation, okay? So the same information that we have in Revit, we can have in this Excel file. This is visual, and I think it's easier to understand. So this is the ventilation. If we didn't have the heat recovery, ventilation will be even more important. But then look at this. When we have good windows, when we have good the good envelope with the R value that meets the passive house standards, there is nothing we can do. The improvement, it's always in the ventilation. So heat recovery, I will never insist enough to recommend you use heat recoveries in buildings because it's the best thing we can do in terms of heating loads. Then this is the infiltration. So infiltration now it's very low because we meet the passive house standards. If these were 5, hello, Paul.
I'm not here.
Okay. If this were 5, this ACH 50, well, infiltration, it's more important than walls or roofs or floors. Okay, so the second thing we can do, well, the second thing is the window area. And the third thing, it's always infiltration. But ventilation, it's always the first. Okay, so the first source of energy losses, it's always ventilation. But anyway, here we can do this. And now we reduce this. Okay. Now we were dealing with the window. What can we do with the windows? So we have this table. Here we have the U value of the windows and the solar heat gain coefficient. If we go to this Guardian, this one, here we don't have the visible light. I will try to implement this for next versions of this Excel file. But what we have here is the solar heat gain coefficient and the U value. Imagine that we select this one. Okay, so it's 0.26, the U value, and the solar heat gain coefficient is sorry, the solar heat gain, it's 0.26, and the U value, it's 0.23. Okay, so this is 0.23, and solar heat gain coefficient 0.26. Okay, and now we have to type the same numbers.
All right, just be more.
No problem. I'm recording the lesson, so you will be
part of it.
Yeah, you will be part of it.
Good.
So this is 0.23 and 0.26. And what have we done here? This is the thermal load. Okay, so the thermal load is always the U value times the area of the windows times indoor minus outdoor temperature. We have to type here the area of the windows in the north elevation, the south, the east, and west. Okay, and where can we find that in Revit? In the schedule, window, schedule, Here we have the area of these windows, and in the wall schedule, we find the area of the storefront. Okay, so we have to add up the area of the curtain wall plus windows in the south, area of the curtain wall and windows in the north, and so on and so forth. But once you type here the area of the windows in different elevations, this value, the thermal load, is always this formula. Okay, so it's U value of the window times the area plus U value of the window in the south times the area of southern windows, east, west, and times indoor minus outdoor. Okay, so that's why the first thing you have to do in this Excel file is to type here indoor temperature minus outdoor temperature. Where can we find this? In Revit, report, heating loads. Remember, this is the dry bulb temperature indoors, 70, it's always 70. And what's the outdoor outside? In this case, we have 33 Fahrenheit. Okay, I think that changed last time when I did that report. I think this was -2, but anyway, in this case, it should be 33. Okay, so I changed this to 33 because this is what Revit does, or this is what Revit has done in this report. That should be the same for all the spaces. Okay, no, for that space, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense because we might have different conditions for. Okay, so look at all these spaces and just select the lowest temperature. It's negative 2.9. So let's type here negative 2.9. Okay, so this is how we calculate the thermal load in Revit. It should be something similar to what Revit has done here. Okay, so in this we have 9,000 for Windows. In this room, then it's 200. In that room, 1,600. In that room, and 500 in that room. So this is 0, okay, so this is around 11,000. According to this, we have 7,000. Okay, why is that? Because what we have selected in Revit, this low emissivity triple glazing, the U value it's 0.25. Okay, and we have selected here 0.23. Okay, so that might explain the difference. If this is 2.6, 0.26. Okay, we are getting there. This is 8,000, and according to Revit, we have 11,000. So what does it do? Probably I didn't place the right area. Yeah, probably I didn't have the right area for the windows there. but we have to check. Anyway, 8,000 and 11,000, the difference is not that much, okay? Is there something I can do to improve the window performance? I can go to the catalog, and the lowest the U value, the better. Okay, so I have found this one 0.23, but we can have up to 0.17. If I type here 0.17, okay, I have reduced this from 8,000 to 5,000. It's an improvement. And then here, this is not 8,000 anymore. It's 5,000. Okay, so those are the things that we can do. First, we need to find out what Revit has done. And then we have to get the same values with the Excel file. And now we understand what Revit has done because we have done the same with the Excel file. Then we can address that by changing the values in the Excel file. Can we change the values in Revit? I can select the curtain panels, and I can edit type. And in this low emissivity triple glazing, we don't have information about this. We can try if this solar heat gain coefficient of 0.2 is similar. The heat transfer coefficient doesn't change. Okay, so it only changes the solar heat gain coefficient. I mean, this is the Revit database. If we don't know where they take these values from, I rely more on the actual catalog because this is certified by Mr. or Mrs. Guardian. Okay? So this is it. This is what we are doing. And sometimes we have different results. We have 11,000 in Revit. We have 8,000 in this file. Well, it will be something in the middle, something between 8 and 11. Let's say 9, 10,000. So that's it. What we do know is that by reducing the U value, we can reduce this. We know that. Apparently, we can't reduce that U value in Revit because all the triple glazing low emissivity, apparently they all have the same U value. Okay, so if we find a catalog in which this U value is lower, we can use it. Finally, how can we turn peak loads in BTUs into monthly energy consumption? So remember, if there is something that you have to learn, not in this course, but from Keene State College, is the difference between energy and power. Okay, so that simple formula, energy equals power times time. That's all we need. And that is very useful because we pay the energy that we consume. Okay, so regardless of the power that we have in our house or in our boiler, what we pay is the energy. We can have something with a lot of power, but if we use it only 2 seconds a day, we pay nothing. Or we can have something that it has a very low power, but if we use it 24 hours a day, we will end up paying a lot of money. Okay, so time. Okay, the higher the power, the more the energy, but it depends mainly on time. So in this case, what we have considered is the time. And the time depends on the number of days and the number of hours that we have. In January, we have 31 days, in February, 28, or 29 sometimes, then 31, 30, 31. And these are the operating hours.
Canceled everything.
What does it mean, the operating hours? That depends on the schedules. Okay. So what is this? We have considered that in January we have around 531 operating hours. So let's see what does it what it means. If we go to the calculator, by default I have this number, so it's 531 divided by 31 days. Okay, so apparently in this case, I have considered that I use the building for 17 hours per day. Does it make sense?
Come over here.
Let's find out. Where can I find this information? In Revit. In the space and power occupancy schedule. Okay, so how many hours a day am I using this facility? Apparently from let's say 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. So how many hours are these? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. It's like 14. Okay. So if I'm using this facility 14 hours a day, how many days a week? That's also important. I think when they do this common office occupancy 8 to 5, they consider that it's only used like 5 days a week, okay, because it's a common office occupancy. We don't have a way here. We have 24 hours on. Okay, so let's assume that it's 5 days per week. So we have 5 days per week times 14 hours a day. So we have okay, so if we have 4 weeks, 70 hours per week, we end up having 208 hours. So this is what we can type here. Okay, so we can have 280 hours. So we can have the same number.
It says protected on here.
It is protected. Yes, it is protected because I think I calculated, there's a formula here. And I calculated this. Okay, I will change this because there is a formula that depends on the number. Oh, okay, this is it. Perfect. I knew that I had the solution here. So we have the operating days per week, 5, and the operating hours per day, 14. And now it changes. Okay. Why is it 280? Because, well, it depends on how, we have more than 4 weeks in a month. Okay, so we have 31 days. So this is 4 weeks. So it's not 280, but yeah, but this is it. We can select the number of hours per number of days per week and the number of hours per day. So we don't have to change anything, just this one. Okay, so these are the operating hours according to the Revit schedule, okay, because this is what we have defined in the Revit schedule. So we have these days per week, hours per day, and then every month we will have this. And then the outdoor temperature, that's important, and you can change this. Okay, because we are doing this, the peak heating load, we use the coldest temperature that we can have on that day. So that's the coldest temperature, negative 2.9. It comes from Revit, again, from the report. So we look at this, we select the lowest temperature that we find in all the spaces, and then we select this for our Excel file. But if we want to do this monthly analysis, the outdoor temperature changes. So it's not the same temperature in January than in July. So we can do this in real simulation software, energy simulation software. They have databases and they do that calculation every 5 minutes. Okay, so they have a record of temperature. So every 5 minutes in January, from January the 1st until December the 21st. It's like an Excel file, but instead of doing this 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 times, they do it 12 times, times 30 days, times every 5 minutes, 24 hours, times, okay, thousands of times. So that's the difference between a professional program and this. Okay, so this is not professional because we have to type here. So I would type the average temperature of January, the average temperature of February. So there would be days that it's colder than 5 Fahrenheit, but there would be some days in January that it's about 5 Fahrenheit. So I have used here the average monthly temperature. So we can find this average monthly temperature in New Hampshire. So look at this, okay? So we have, we can find this information very easily. In January, we can use the average low temperatures, not the average. If we want to be on the safe side, we can use this 9.7, 12.6, and so on and so forth. Okay. Even more, I would use in winter, January, February, March, and April. I would use the low average, and in summer, June, July, August, and September, I would use the high average. Okay, so this is what I have done. So if we want to keep that information correct, but probably we will have other, because I think I used this average temperature. I found this for Keene, New Hampshire. Okay, anyway, this is in Concord. Do we have any other? I'm sure that in Mount Washington, the temperature will be much colder. Okay, so if we want to, okay, if we're in New Hampshire, probably this Mount Washington is the coldest place in New Hampshire. So we can use in January, the average lowest temperature is negative 3.5. I don't know, we don't have Keene here, we don't have Concord and Mount Washington. I don't know, Keene, probably it's slightly colder than Concord, or probably not. Anyway, we have to find the average temperatures. So we have to use the average lowest temperature in winter and the average highest temperature in summer. So in June, July, August, September, we will use the average highest, and the rest of the months we can use the average lowest temperature. But it's not different. It's not. It won't be much different than the temperatures that I have used here. So this is how it works. To calculate the monthly performance, we need to know the operating hours per month. So operating days per week plus times operating hours per day. Then here we have to select the average temperature in the city in which we are analyzing the building. And these are formulas. So probably all this is protected because this formula, it has to do with the area of the walls. Okay, so here we have the U value of the walls, the area of the walls. But now it's not that indoor minus outdoor temperature, it's the indoor minus, because we have to multiply this times the time of the day. We have this average temperature that we have found here. Okay, so that would be the average the average temperature in January. And in this graph, we have a lot of information. We have different codes. So the blue is ventilation. The green is the windows transmittance. The red is the floor. This is the roof. Okay, so here we have a lot of information, and here this is the window solar heat gain. That is something that we don't have in Revit. Okay, so in Revit, if we go to the heating report, glass solar is always 0 because it takes into account the worst possible conditions. So what is the worst possible condition in winter? A very cold temperature on a cloudy day or during the evening. Okay, so that's why in heating, the glass solar, it's always 0. It's always 0 in the worst possible moment. But we do have solar gains. Today is cold, it's sunny, and we are having a lot of solar gains through the southern windows. So this is what this Excel file takes into account. And this is negative, okay? So you see that in this case, in this Excel file, positive, it's heating loads, and negative, it's cooling loads. So in summer, we gain heat to the windows, and in summer, the most important thing is the glass solar. That is the same thing we found out in the Revit report. If we go to cooling, the glass solar is the worst cooling load that we can have here. So this is what that means. Okay, but looking at this picture gives us more information because gaining heat from the sun in winter, it's something positive. In Revit, we don't have this feeling. We only know that in summer or in cooling conditions, glass solar is terrible. But looking at this, we can find out, or we can realize that glass solar is not that bad because in May, this is what the zero energy building is, and in October, okay, so we don't need the heating loads or the solar heat gains make up for the heating loads in May and October. So in this building, with that amount of glass, there are 2 months in which if we didn't have any glass, we would have this heating load. But having this glass make up for the heating load that we have in these 2 months. Okay, and even in January, we have this extra heating that is for free. Okay, so we have to subtract the actual value minus the heat gains that we have due to the sun. Okay, so this monthly analysis, it's not better or worse. It gives us more information. So sometimes we tend to think, oh, don't use glass because the peak load due to the glass, it's terrible. Okay, but don't look at the peak load. Look at the monthly performance. So all these, if we didn't have windows, we wouldn't have all these heat gains in winter conditions. Okay, so that's why it's complicated. The recipe, don't use big windows in New England. I think this is what they are doing now. They are in New York, they tried to New York City isn't banning glass skyscrapers after all. They tried. Okay, so they tried to forbid glass skyscrapers. Why? If you look at the peak loads, this is what you have to do. Does it make sense having a glass skyscrapers with the same elevation in the north, in the south, in the east, and the west? It doesn't make sense. So what do? The easiest solution, it's not allowed. Okay, that's the easiest thing. And sometimes we tend to do what it seems the easiest implementation of something that is good. Okay, so you analyze a problem, but then once we have analyzed and realized that there's a problem, then we have to give a solution. So the easiest solution, forbidden. Well, they are not doing it because there were a lot of complaints, and so they couldn't do that. In Massachusetts, we had a guest last year in one of the reviews, and he's in Boston. He's a practice architect in Boston, and there's a code in Boston that they are limiting the glass area to, I don't know, 30%, something like that in buildings. Well, it's not like banning glass in, so you can't use glass in the skyscrapers. What? No, but they have limited the area, or they want to limit the area to 30%. Again, if we analyze reports, and I told you weeks ago that glass is, in terms of the peak load, is the biggest problem that we have in buildings, especially for cooling. Okay, what I tried to do with this exercise is not, okay, we can't use, okay, is it necessary? Do we need this glass? Is there a reason that we have to use this amount of glass? Do we have nice views? Or again, is there a way that we can benefit from the sun in winter? Because the benefits of the sun in winter are here. Okay, so if we didn't have this glass, we wouldn't have these heat gains in winter. So be careful with, oh, the glass is the problem. The glass is forbidden. No, okay, but we need natural light. Oh, yes, well, we need natural light. Okay, only 30% of glass in a wall. In which wall? In the northern wall, in the southern wall, in the western, eastern? And what if I have solar protections for the southern wall? And what if we have the most efficient triple glazing that I find in the market? So is it the same? Do I have to use the same area of walls or of glass for single glazing than for triple glazing? If I use triple glazing, will you allow me to get up to the 40% of glass instead of 30? So that's why we have to be careful with the rules and regulations, because when we find a rule, probably there's a good aim. Okay, so okay, we have to reduce the cooling loads in winter, in summer in Boston. It doesn't make sense. The outdoor temperature is almost comfort temperature. It's not a hot place in New England, and we have peak loads. Okay, let's, what's the problem? You analyze this report. The problem is the glass. Okay, let's get rid of the glass. Things are more complicated than that. Okay, so but sometimes if you have to create a rule or a building code, if you start, okay, in the southern elevations, we will have this, but if you have triple glazing, you will have that. If you have triple glazing with low emissivity coatings, then there will be another exception. So that's exhausting for the prescriptor and even for the architect, that we have to read a lot of information. So, okay, let's get rid of glass. We need glass, we need natural light, 30%. And what if I want to do 50% and I can prove that my building is more efficient with this 50% of glass than another building with a 30%. That's very complicated, but usually those codes allow architects to prove that. Okay, so prove me, and then you have to use this kind of simulation tools. But again, you need to know a lot. And sometimes you have to use this monthly performance instead of the peak load. Because for the monthly performance, you can prove that if you didn't have glass, probably you will end up consuming more energy than having glass, because you take into account the solar gains in winter.